I want to welcome everybody. I know it's Christmas Eve. I don't celebrate Christmas, but I guess have a happy holiday if you do. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of people here today, but you can catch up whenever you're back on. I've had kind of a rough week and a half. I'm kind of like going through a couple of things at work, uh, kind of looking at a couple options for the future, but there's nothing that's changed recently. Just a lot of, you know, a lot of issues where I think there might be a change coming up at some point, and I'll leave it at that. So I want to say hi to Larry Gerke if he listens, not today, but maybe um, if he listens later. Thanks for asking earlier. Um, there's plenty of issues to talk about today. I'm going to talk a little NFL to begin with. Yeah, the season is over, not officially, but for me, the Cowboys totally choked today. It was a horrible game, probably one of the worst I've seen in the past few years. Certainly, I've seen it, on occasion. There's definitely been bad games that I've missed, like the Denver game earlier this year, where they were just completely eviscerated in what was one of the most embarrassing shows of ineptitude. But I missed that game. I didn't see it on TV. Today's game, I saw half of it, and it was pretty much a waste of time. They had plenty of opportunities to beat a team that was kind of reeling from injuries, the Seattle Seahawks, who will probably be in the run. They are in the running next week. Everything that we needed to happen happened before the game. Atlanta lost. Carolina, I think, also, if I'm not mistaken, lost. Detroit lost. Actually, I think Carolina won. I'm wrong. But in any case, you couldn't have asked for a better situation, and they just blew it. And for me, there's many years where I think it's good enough if we beat Washington, sweep them twice, two games. Uh, then it would be probably beating the Giants twice, or because with Washington it's important enough that I consider those two games the most important ones. We have to win those two. Then it would probably be the Giants, and then beating any of the other three teams that I really hate, which would be San Francisco, Green Bay, and Pittsburgh. So we beat San Francisco, lost to Pittsburgh. No, sorry, lost to Green Bay. Didn't play Pittsburgh this year. It's been overall kind of topsy-turvy season, really framed around the Ezekiel Elliott suspension. But it's not only because of that. Really, this is a team that is lacking in imagination. I think that they should fire Jason Garrett. And there's got to be somebody who wants to coach the Dallas Cowboys, especially since Jerry Jones is likely not going to be managing the team in 5 years. He's getting really old, and obviously his facelift is showing him to be some sort of cyborg mutant. He can't pull it off anymore. So that's about it for football today, except for there was the issue of Cleveland going 0-15. So they're setting up a perfect season next week. Now I do live in Cleveland, never been a fan, but if they do hold a perfect season 0-16 parade, I might actually go because there will be some really fun drinking and partying there, and I know a lot of people that would be going. So there's that. I didn't go to the Cavaliers championship parade, probably because I'm not that big of a basketball fan. But yeah, this would be pretty cool. And that's your daily entertainment. That's about as deep as it gets for me. I haven't seen the new Star Wars, so for those of you that are really pissed off about it, I don't give a shit whether you like the film or not. I may see it, I may not. Haven't decided yet. It's not that important to me. A couple of issues that are cropping up now on the political scene, of course. There are more and more indications that not just the Mueller investigation, but indeed the Justice Department, as it was constituted under Barack Obama, has just been a tool for political purposes. And that's a bad sign for the country because obviously there have been points in the past, not related to Obama, where people don't have trust in the institutions of law enforcement and justice. And I'm talking about the things that are going on 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. COINTELPRO, I still get people, number 80, you've seen him on this channel before, complaining about COINTELPRO, a program that happened, decades before he was born. Now, I think that it's a lot of sour grapes over nothing for him, but it's a black eye in the history of the agency when they don't follow due process of law, and they're the Justice Department. What are you supposed to do? There's other issues where the Justice Department has over the past. I mean, they've performed unlawful surveillance and things like that, and that's been the case here, and it's been getting worse. So those that say, "Oh, it's always been like this," well, okay, maybe it's always been kind of like this. It's never been this bad, where you have a partisan and completely political Justice Department, and it pretty much, uh, it mirrors the wishes of a certain political class that seeks to limit the amount of input that the average American has on the political system. Now, I think that one of the dumbest things that people do to deflect from this is to say, well, look, both Robert Mueller and James Comey are registered Republicans. They've been Republicans their entire lives. And Bob Mueller was appointed by President George Bush. And that would be a fair point if we were talking about them dealing with an administration that was a traditional Republican administration, in which case I would say, yeah, absolutely, you have a point that they wouldn't have bias. But the fact is that it's been documented. It's been a story since the primaries that the Bush wing of the Republican Party does not get along with Donald Trump and his movement. They hate each other. Donald Trump was famous for calling Jeb Bush low energy Jeb. He made fun of the Bush family. He still says that George Bush was the worst president in American history. And it's his way of digging at people that he sees as political opponents. So those of you liberals that may be out there watching, or that I might come across day to day, and I have, that say, well, this is ridiculous. Why would you say that Bob Mueller would not be an impartial investigator? I mean, he's you should be satisfied. He's a Republican. Well, I'm not a Republican. I don't believe that the two-party system before it's not as if you say, well, now we agree that paintbrushes and screwdrivers do two different jobs, right? But it does not mean that if a paintbrush can't do a certain job, a screwdriver can. That's not the way it works. But that's the way that the establishment media, what they call the mainstream media, I call them mass media conglomerates, because that's the more corporate formatted term for it. That's the way they perceive of the Republican and Democratic Party. When you need to push a pro-business policy, a policy that's favorable to your business, you generally do go to the Republican Party, and they're able to dress it up and make it into some sort of fake policy that they say helps Americans. Now, I will say that there are a number of Republican policies that I agree with. So it's not as if I have total disagreement with the Republican Party. I just think that when it comes to implementing those policies, they happen to be, just disgraceful frauds most of the time. Donald Trump's been a vast improvement on them. Donald Trump is really a departure from them. There's a lot of those guys that have, over the years, they've helped the country get further and further into debt. John Boehner was a joke as Speaker of the House. Newt Gingrich as well. Notwithstanding his recent support for Donald Trump, Newt Gingrich was a wasteful Speaker of the House. And he was, kind of the archetype of the fraudulent Republican leader. So I don't support the Republican Party. Now, the Democratic Party, I'd say that ideologically I've virtually nothing in common with. But with the Mueller investigation, when they come up to you this is my suggestion. When people come up to you, or you know, the topic comes up in a conversation, whatever the case may be, and they say, well, you know what the fuck you're talking about, because Bob Mueller is registered Republican. There's no reason why he would chase after Donald Trump. Well, all you have to say is, well, he was a Bush Republican. Is Donald Trump a Bush Republican? Absolutely not. The Bush Republicans hate Donald Trump. That's why David Frum, who you could look at the video from yesterday, David Frum publishes shit all the time about Donald Trump in the Atlantic. Goes on TV. Any place I'll listen to him. MSNBC, I think, is no, it was CNN, where he recently did a commentary. It was very famous. I think I missed speaking about it on this these live streams, but he happened to answer a question about mistakes in reporting, which are fake news. In the case that he was talking about was complete fake news, complete bullshit. They asked him, well, what do you do about allegations of mistakes, and how does that affect the trustworthiness of the news source? And he said, well, you trust the news source because of the mistakes. And this is a Bush appointee. He was a Bush speechwriter, David Frum, and you know, I've been hearing him from here, you know, for now and then, for a while. But I think with that type of statement, you do have to take a watch. Yeah, you have to watch those people, because those are the people that started the Iraq War. Those are the people that they covered up the issues of the Bush administration. And what we have the chance to do, you know, like it or not, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, is to have an administration where there's a fair amount of transparency, some reform. Obviously, it's going to be difficult to say that Trump will be completely forthcoming with everything he does. I mean, he's definitely kept his secrets. You know, I don't care about his tax returns, but many people do, and it was a tradition that a lot of presidents, or every presidential candidate for a certain amount of years, release their tax returns. It's not required by law, but what we are dealing with instead is just the residual effects of several administrations that used classification of information in order to conceal all sorts of shit that they did, all sorts of things that they didn't want people to know. Now, President Bush was a total train wreck. I wouldn't say that everything that they said about him was correct. That was, you know, defamatory of him. For example, we have the story where Dan Rather tried to smear him, claiming that he was trying to avoid the Vietnam War, when in reality, the story, at least as he presented it, was backed up by nothing but forged records that couldn't have possibly been produced at the time. Let me see. I think the connection's slowing down. Look, I'm gonna come right back. I'm gonna go get some soda. So you sit tight. I'll be there. I'll be back probably in like less than a minute. So, you know, we'll continue. There, was that so bad? You guys still there? Tell me if you guys are still there. You guys should be chatting. You know, you guys should be chatting up a storm now. See, I'm back. So we have a number of issues to cover today related to the topics that I opened with except for the cowboy shit, which we're not going to talk about for as long as I can. The Mueller investigation is literally becoming a, kind of the Frankenstein monster, and Mueller appropriately looks a lot like Frankenstein because its creators, excuse me, its creators believed that it would bring down the administration of Donald Trump. And what it's actually done is exposed the compromising web of relationships between Obama and Clinton era subordinates. Okay. Now, we can start any number of places. Now, I want to get out of the way the whole Cenk Uygur thing. Just so you know, Cenk Uygur, for those of you that don't follow the Young Turks at all, I have the same tab on 2 different pages. Isn't that funny? So, what is going on? Trying to share a screen, guys. Okay, here we go. So, the Young Turks, before we get to the Mueller investigation, the Young Turks are a progressive network on YouTube, and they're run by this guy named Cenk Uygur. And Cenk Uygur is this Turkish-born progressive activist who has been, for years, he's been ranting and getting into this feminist bullshit until like a couple days ago, as I explained yesterday. He was exposed for having these blogs in the late 90s that were very I don't know if you could call them misogynistic. I mean, he said that women are genetically deformed or something, and he apologized, of course, and he said, well, this was from when I was a conservative or whatever. That's what I believed as a conservative. Well, I could probably say that, I know some pretty big douches around of different political stripes. Not every conservative believes what Cenk Uygur believes, and in fact, I'd probably say that it's very rare that I see anybody of any political persuasion publishing blogs saying that stuff. Now, people might say it, shit posting on the internet or in trolling or stuff like that, or getting or in the locker room or something, as in locker room talk. People might say it in jest or in some sort of usually in a more joking way. What Cenk Uygur was writing was not exactly that. It was kind of his personal opinion at the time. And Sargon of Akkad went and did a video earlier where he said that Cenk did move away from that type of belief system, and he's completely different, and he hasn't done anything wrong. Now, I think that Sargon, in a world where people think logically, yeah, he'd be absolutely correct, and I have no problem with what Sargon said. But the fact of the matter is, when you're Cenk Uygur and you're somebody who has been working for years on presenting feminism as the new correct way of thinking in gender relations, and you promote somebody, I'm going to come back to this, but you promote somebody like Anita Sarkeesian, who is an author and web creator, and I think she was for like a short while a gaming creator or something, who's done the utmost to smear other internet users and journalists and gamers especially, and call them sexists and pigs and whatever. And you've embraced that culture where anybody who says something that's mildly offensive to women or mildly offensive to gays or to Muslims or to blacks or to Mexicans or throw in whatever category you want. When you embrace that type of judgment reflex, which is what he's been doing for a long time, and not as bad as some other people, but he's definitely drifted into that category, then I can't really feel bad for him. And it gets worse when you figure not only did he once hold these beliefs, he hired his nephew, this Hassan Piker, who is famous for going to, I think it was Politicon, which is a nationally followed young people political event in the summer where, there's debates and all that type of bullshit. Hassan Piker got demolished in that debate with Charlie Kirk, who you might know as the founder and CEO of Turning Points USA. Charlie Kirk's actually a pretty smart guy. I think he does some pretty good work. It took a while for me to really come around to what he's talking about, but I think he has a great delivery. And Hassan Piker is Cenk Uygur's nephew, and this is his video as exposed by the Gateway Pundit, which is a right-wing blog. And he's talking about how to separate a girl from her cock-blocking friends in the club. And you can see him; he's all broed up. He's got like the swole figure sitting in the chair with the stupid pink chinos and the loafers. And I mean, what else do you need here? And I think I've shared it in the description. I can't share the audio on here, so you'll just have to go there and listen to it yourself. Now, let me be clear. I couldn't care less what he says here. It says, for example, he says the rule Piker covers in the video he calls the "let's get out of here" rule, which he claims helped him lose his virginity. You're in the club, you finally use the 5-second rule because you're smart now, because you follow bro tip, and you start. That's what he calls these segments, bro tip. And you start talking to this girl, which finally leads to hooking up. And you're bold enough to grab an ass cheek and then maybe even get some hand play downstairs. Michael rambles. What is the next move? You need to get out of there, and you need to get out of there fast, hopefully with the girl. Piker then proceeds to provide his viewers with the magic words to get laid, or as his uncle put it when he discussed how he picks up women, trick them into sleeping with you. Let's get out of here, he says. It's time to separate her from her herd, meaning her crowd of girlfriends that are going to do their best to cock block you because they're fat and lonely, Piker states. So I don't think I have to read any more of this because it's kind of just repetitive. It's the same stuff. And they recount like the Cenk Uygur article, which is, I kind of went over it yesterday, but it's by Cassandra Fairbanks, who's she's not a bad journalist. She's not, I wouldn't say she's totally deep, but she's respectable. She works with Mike Cernovich, who I think does a lot of interesting work. I wouldn't say I agree with everything. It's stupid to have to say all the time, I wouldn't agree with everything somebody has to say, but Mike Cernovich he's done a lot of interesting, good stories the past year. Very diligent stuff, all about freedom of speech. I don't really have a problem with him. Augusto Pinochet says, "Merry Christmas, my Jewish friend, and Happy Hanukkah." Well, Merry Christmas to you. Hanukkah was over last week, but thank you. I have to actually work off the pounds from Hanukkah. Would Cenk give anyone else a pass? No. So boo-hoo. Well, I've seen him give passes to people in the past, but the fact that he promoted Anita Sarkeesian, and like you said, he has gone and played Inquisition with a lot of people in the past. No, I think he definitely deserves the same type of mob justice that he's promoted. Mob justice being the social justice crowd, where they just bay and moan for somebody's blood. Yeah, I mean, screw him. This the Young Turks. I used to watch some of their stuff. Used to agree with some of it. The political stuff not as much, but some of the cultural stuff was interesting. They used to actually do segments about how the Washington Redskins are a racist team nickname, and I agreed with them. I probably still would agree with them, but because they've swallowed it up with all of their other nonsense, then what's the point of arguing that anymore? It's a pointless discussion. Denise T says to Pinochet that Cenk is a cutthroat hypocrite. Yeah, he is. He's been with the genocide, the Armenian genocide, which I used to think people were joking when he denied it. Well, for a while he really did deny it. So that's about it. Hopefully their network does fall apart because honestly, on the progressive side, even though I'm not a progressive, there are some normal people there. They're not very numerous. There would be Tim Black and H.A. Goodman. Um, I'd say Jimmy Dore still counts as one. Lee Camp. There's some normal people on the left, relatively normal compared to this garbage. Cenk Uygur, who's he's a mental midget, thinks of himself way too much. Augusto Pinochet says he absolutely is. Screw him. So I think let's wrap up that segment. We're going to continue to kind of dip back and forth into it, and we're going to move on to Obama. Barack Obama, for those of you that don't know, in the past week or so, it's been revealed that the United States under Barack Obama, President Obama, decided to look the other way. Not only look the other way, but quash an investigation into cocaine distribution in the United States by operatives of the Hezbollah organization, which are defined as a terror organization by a number of countries. Let me see where they're defined as a terror. It's ridiculous that you have to define it everywhere. Like it should be that people should know what is or what isn't a terrorist, but because different countries have different interests, some countries may define the same terrorist group as a freedom fighter group. That's the stupid saying that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Well, you don't have to say that. You can just say, my daddy can whoop your daddy's ass. I mean, that's it's worth the same. It's all about people thinking that a certain tactic when you use it is wrong, and a certain tactic when I use it is justified, right? Like when I always talk about America first, but I'm wearing a Mexico soccer jersey and I'm drinking Canada Dry. Now, does that make me a supporter of NAFTA? Well, I guess we'll have to see, right? but you get what I'm talking about, right? Let me see. Hezbollah terror designation. I guess I'll have to look at Wikipedia. Okay, so the following entities have listed Hezbollah as a terrorist group: the Arab League, Australia, Bahrain, Canada, the European Union, who fuck them anyway, but only the military wing. So, if you're going to their snow cone stand, then fine, don't worry about it. The Gulf Cooperation Council, Israel, Japan, the Netherlands, New Zealand, only part of it, the UK, only the military wing, and the United States. Okay, so the following countries do not consider Hezbollah a terror organization: China, Cuba, and Cuba actually has a Hezbollah base in Cuba, Iran, Iraq, North Korea, Russia, Syria, and Venezuela. Now, before we go any further, I'm not saying that countries can't pursue their own interests, and I'm not saying that either way. I'd rather Russia not support Hezbollah because Hezbollah targets people like me. However, it's understandable that certain countries would have natural support for Hezbollah. This is not what's the issue here today, because it's not up to the United States whether Russia supports Hezbollah or Syria does, or Iran, who would naturally do it because they have a total religious connection to Hezbollah, and they're their main funders and sugar daddies. That's not the issue here. The issue here is the United States under Barack Obama decided to allow a cocaine trafficking ring to operate that was sending money to Hezbollah. It says here in The Hill, this is by Rebecca Heinrichs. Now, this is an opinion piece, so it's not as if the Hill is publishing this as their own views, and they make that clear to everybody. But it says the Obama administration blocked a highly effective interagency effort to dismantle a Hezbollah drug and money laundering enterprise to grease the skids for the nuclear deal with Iran. That's a story Josh Meyer of Politico told in his recent, well-documented, well-sourced investigative report. Admittedly, for those unfamiliar with the context of the Iran deal, it must sound outlandish. But for those who follow the events surrounding the Iran deal, it fits a pattern of Obama administration behavior and is entirely believable. In 2009, President Obama outlined his vision of a world without nuclear weapons. And the centerpiece of this anti-nuclear weapon agenda was to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear weapons state. The Obama team set out to negotiate a deal that would supposedly roll back the nuclear program and set up a verification regime to ensure compliance. Many Iran watchers were skeptical, to say the least. The regime was as repressive, anti-Zionist, and supportive of Islamist militancy as it ever was. Even if the Obama diplomats could verifiably totally dismantle the nuclear program, flushing the regime with cash without requiring reform in other areas seemed dangerously foolish. And it took years of diplomatic heavy lifting for the United States to build consensus among other nations to isolate Iran. Sanctions may not have finally prevented Iran from stopping its nuclear program, but they were really starting to hurt the regime. After all, it was the pain from those sanctions and isolation that brought Iran to the negotiating table in the first place. But President Obama sought to allay concerns, insisting that he was willing to walk away if the deal wasn't good. This was quickly disproven. For example, Iran was permitted to keep some key technology necessary for making a nuclear weapon, while only at lower levels, Iran was permitted to continue enriching the uranium, an irreversible blow to what's left of the non-proliferation regime. We were promised anytime, anywhere inspections, but by the time the deal was done, verification, while still hailed as the toughest verification regime in history, still only allows managed access to Iranian sites, and the agreement was written with such ambiguity as to allow the Iranians to continue to insist certain sites remain off limits. So they could be developing a parallel program. Also, Obama officials with great messaging discipline insisted all Iranian malignant activity unrelated to the nuclear program would be addressed in other ways, but excluded from Iran deal negotiations. But what about Iran's illicit missile program? We were told by the lead U.S. negotiator, Wendy Sherman, it would be addressed in some way, even if excluded from the terms of the Iran deal. Can you guys see my cursor? What about Iran's terrorism? We were told terrorism-related sanctions would remain in place. Even so, John Kerry and Susan Rice admitted that the money from the Iran deal would almost certainly be used to fund Iran's continued terrorism activities. But the Iran nuclear deal, which even according to President Obama, would only delay Iran's breakout time by mere months, not eliminate it, was so important to the Obama agenda that the administration insisted the scope of the deal must remain excruciatingly narrow. Officials and their friends in the media argued that tacking on other issues risked upending the Iran deal. As the administration's time to seal the deal dwindled away and Congress considered levying more sanctions against Iran, those who continued to sound the alarm about the concessions were admonished to give peace a chance. Put another way, the administration's construction was the Iran deal or war. So when Iran released American hostages in exchange for hundreds of millions, which we later found out was actually billions of dollars, it was impossible to believe this transaction was not another concession by Obama officials if the alternative was derailing the Iran deal, aka war. And wouldn't it be worth it to Obama officials to answer the demands of the Iranian government and release Iranian prisoners guilty of conspiring harm against America if, according to them, the alternative was derailing the Iran deal and therefore war? if Obama officials were willing to accept that money Iran would acquire due to the Iran deal would be used to fund its far-reaching terrorism operations, if Obama officials were willing to lay off Iran's efforts to build a massive ballistic missile force, were willing to break U.S. policy about ransoms, predictably inciting Iran to nab more hostages, willing to free more from prisoners, dangerous men bent on harming the United States, the political report is entirely compatible with what we already know. What's thwarting an anti-Hezbollah effort when the alternative was derailing the Iran deal, aka war? And to be clear, nobody believed the Obama administration was ever considering war with Iran. This was just a hyperbolic construction to sell the administration's precious deal, which legitimized Iran as an acceptable, indeed recommended trade partner. The political report is indeed a bombshell, but it's really not surprising. The question we should I'll be asking at this point is, what other concessions did the Obama administration make that are out there waiting for more bold journalists to uncover? So I've kind of read off the script here. What's going on here? Pinochet says, just got the anti-Chomsky reader and can't wait to dive into it. Have you read it? No, but I mean, maybe send it to me. I could take a look. I think I've heard something about that. I tried to list all the scandals that have come out in the last 10 years, and holy crap, it's just mind-blowing what has become of our government. Now, look, as I've said, asking Russia not to support an organization that you oppose, it's not realistic. Russia has a contrarian viewpoint towards the United States. They don't want to do things according to our interests. They want to do things according to Russia's interests. And the same thing for Iran. But Iran's interests are more expansionist than Russia's are. They're more religiously motivated and fanatical than Russia's are. They happen to have a couple points of cooperation where they can find, especially countering Sunni Muslim fanatical groups like Al Qaeda and ISIS that threaten both Russia and Iran. Iran is a Shiite country. Saudi Arabia is a Sunni country. Iraq and Syria are divided between Sunnis and Shiites, and I guess in Syria's case, it's more Alawites. But the point is that you're talking about a sectarian mess. Hezbollah happens to be a Lebanese group that's allied with Iran that are fanatical Shiite jihadists. And, they're just pursuing their own interests. Now, they are a terror organization, and they do attack terror targets overseas. They've done it in Argentina, especially. They've done it in Bulgaria, I believe. And I believe that they're considered the best armed non-state organization in the world. And they're nobody to laugh at. Now, for the Obama administration to try and sell this Iran deal, and at the same time, they were doing things like, here we go. By doing things like allowing a cocaine smuggling ring to operate in the United States, by releasing Iranian terror operatives in the United States that had been arrested in the past, by paying ransoms to Iran, President Obama was basically saying, I don't really care what price I need to pay, but I want and I need this deal in order to show something for my foreign policy. And what he did was send that giant schnook, John Kerry, to Iran time after time, or to other sites where they were doing the negotiations. And they were basically saying, look, we're fine with you guys killing people. We're fine with you guys killing people in Syria. We're fine with you guys killing people in across the globe. We're fine with you committing other crimes across the globe. We just want this deal. Okay. Let me see if Snopes validated. So this was actually exposed. So Hezbollah is linked to a $483 million laundering scheme on December 15th, 2011. And this is all part of Project Cassandra. So this ties together with a couple topics that I've been covering from time to time. Here we go. This is from Political. It says the secret backstory of how Hezbollah of how Obama let Hezbollah off the hook. An ambitious U.S. task force targeting Hezbollah's billion-dollar criminal enterprise ran headlong into the White House's desire for a nuclear deal with Iran. And it says the campaign dubbed Project Cassandra was launched in 2008 after the Drug Enforcement Administration amassed evidence that Hezbollah had transformed itself from a Middle East-focused military and political organization into an international crime syndicate that some investigators believed was collecting $1 billion a year from drugs and weapons trafficking, money laundering, and other criminal activities. Over the next 8 years, agents working out of a top-secret DEA facility in Chantilly, Virginia, used wiretaps, undercover operations, and informants to map Hezbollah's illicit networks with the help of 30 U.S. and foreign security agencies. They followed cocaine shipments coming from Latin America to West Africa and on to Europe and the Middle East, and others through Venezuela and Mexico to the United States. They tracked the river of dirty cash as it was laundered by, among other tactics, buying American used cars and shipping them to Africa. And with the help of some key cooperating witnesses, the agents traced the conspiracy they believed to the innermost circle of Hezbollah and its state sponsors in Iran. But as Project Cassandra reached higher into the hierarchy of conspiracy, Obama administration officials threw away an increasingly insurmountable series of roadblocks in its way. According to interviews with dozens of participants who in many cases spoke for the first time about the events shrouded in secrecy, and a review of government documents and court records, when Project Cassandra leaders saw approval for some significant investigations, prosecutions, arrests, and financial sanctions, officials of the Justice and Treasury Departments delayed, hindered, or rejected their requests. The Justice Department declined requests by Project Cassandra and other authorities to file criminal charges against major players such as Hezbollah's high-profile envoy to Iran, a Lebanese bank that allegedly laundered billions in alleged drug profits, and a central player in a U.S.-based cell of the Iranian paramilitary Quds Force. And the State Department rejected requests to lure high-value targets to countries where they could be arrested. Now, what are the problems here? Now, we're talking about, so it says, this was by U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara. You may remember him for being one of the attorneys that Donald Trump fired. But he wasn't an awful attorney, district attorney. He just happened to have been a Obama district attorney. And, he was one of the people that exposed this scheme. It says this was a policy decision. It was a systematic decision, said David Asher, who helped establish and oversee Project Cassandra as its Defense Department illicit finance analyst. They serially ripped apart this entire effort that was very well supported and resourced, and it was done from the top down. So let's move down here. It says the man who would become Obama's top. Now I don't have here, let me put the article in the chat so you guys can look it up, because it's not in the description. I'm sorry to tell you. So if you want to look up the article yourself later, because I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's much longer than the other articles, and I've already gone pretty long anyway, and there's still much to go. But it says, the man who would become Obama's top counterterrorism advisor and the CIA director, John Brennan, went further. He recommended in a policy paper that the next president has the opportunity to set a new course of relations between the two countries, the USA and Iran, though not only a direct dialogue, but greater assimilation of Hezbollah into Lebanon's political system. By May 2010, Brennan, then assistant to the president for Homeland Security and Terrorism, confirmed in a speech that the administration was looking for ways to build up moderate elements within Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a very interesting organization, Brennan told the Washington conference, saying it had evolved from purely a terrorist organization to a militia and ultimately a political party with representatives in the Lebanese parliament and cabinet, according to a Reuters report. There is certainly the elements of Hezbollah that are truly a concern to us, what they are doing, Brennan said, and what we need to do is to find ways to diminish their influence within the organization and to try to build up the more moderate elements. Now, to be clear, this is the exact same type of language that the Obama administration thought that they could use with regard to the Taliban, with regard to dealing with Muslim groups in the United States, with regards to dealing with Iran, with regards to dealing with Cuba. They've always believed there's always some sort of moderate minority within that group that we can deal with and that they're cool. And the result in every case is that we've gotten nothing. In the case of the Taliban, for example, we gave 6 key Taliban chieftains over back to the Taliban in exchange for a deserter, Bo Bergdahl. You know, we got nothing, essentially, and Obama hailed it as a success. Everybody knows now that the Bergdahl case should be looked at as one of the worst scandals of how did Americans not go out and say, what the fuck are you doing? You know, you're going to give over 6 hardcore, Taliban chiefs for, this scrub. In practice, the administration's willingness to envision a new role for Hezbollah in the Middle East, combined with its desire for negotiated settlement to Iran's nuclear program, translated into a reluctance to move aggressively against the top Hezbollah operatives, according to Project Cassandra members and others. Lebanese arms dealer Ali Fayyad, this is my last paragraph, a suspected top Hezbollah operative whom agents believe reported to Russian President Vladimir Putin as a key supplier of weapons to Syria and Iraq, was arrested in Prague in the spring of 2014. But for the nearly 2 years Fayyad was in custody, top Obama administration officials declined to apply serious pressure on the Czech government to extradite him to the United States, even as Putin was lobbying aggressively against it. Fayyad, who had been indicted in U.S. courts on charges of planning the murders of U.S. government employees, attempting to provide material support to a terrorist organization, and attempting to acquire, transfer, and use anti-aircraft missiles, was ultimately sent to Beirut. He is now believed by U.S. officials to be back in business and helping to arm militants in Syria and elsewhere with Russian heavy weapons. And there's actually a snapshot of the indictment against Ali Fayyad, and you can actually link to the indictment from and it says he's been dealing arms in Colombia and various other places. So there's a lot of details here, and it's a pretty ridiculous situation for people to defend Obama if they do. Let me see some of the comments on the article. I hate it sometimes when sometimes I can't help it but to read some of the comments, but actually here there is none. So unless they're at the top. Nope. So look, the issue here is, does the Obama administration believe that its own policy goals supersede its legal obligations? Because there have been leaders in the United States and across the world that have. They've said, well, it's more important for me to accomplish my goals as policy, especially promoting peace with Iran, for example, than it is to follow my own laws or to remain within the legal framework of United States, the United States administration. Now, what this means is essentially that it makes what happened with the Iran-Contra affair literally mean nothing. The Iran-Contra affair, there was at least the point where you could say, yeah, we were selling arms to Iran in order to get our hostages back. Um, here, you're actually allowing cocaine trafficking to occur in the United States in exchange for a nuclear deal. You're dealing directly with a terrorist organization, allowing them to receive funding, and and also you're freeing terror operatives that have already been arrested, and in one case, a terror operative and arms dealer that had been detained in the Czech Republic. So this, I think, is if the Iran-Contra affair was a huge deal in the 80s, and then Democrats were so up in arms about Ali North going to Iran and organizing this complicated swap, and using some of that money to fund the Contras over in Nicaragua, which I'm not saying that was legal. I'm not saying it was good, but they should be equally up in arms about this, but they're not. Because there is no consequence in their mind. Everything that Obama did, the means, just the ends justify the means. Sorry, that's their attitude towards it. And a lot of the officials in the Obama administration, I'd like to know how much they knew about this policy. You had his Homeland Security director. I know the last one was Jay Johnson. So Janet Napolitano, who was she's now the head of the University of California system, that she would try to, she would not be pissed off about this. I think that would be very disturbing to me. I mean, she's now in charge of all these students. Let me see. I think the DEA falls under the Department of Justice. Now, the Department of Justice was run at the time by Eric Holder, then by Loretta Lynch, for them to look the other way and from the top decide that we would not only let cocaine traffickers operate in the United States, but we would also bust other cocaine traffickers who had nothing to do with terrorism and put them in jail and ruin their lives and create criminals out of them, which is, that's up to you whether you think cocaine trafficking is wrong. I think, I think at the moment I'd say that, yeah, it's wrong to deal cocaine. It's more wrong to deal cocaine and use the proceeds to fund militant groups. I think it's a little step further. If you're talking about what's the best way to help humanity, I don't think that allowing hundreds of millions of dollars drug operation operating across continents that funnels money to Hezbollah, a terror group in the Middle East. I don't think that that's the best way to promote peace in the world. But Eric Holder went along with it. Janet Napolitano, I believe, I'm not, don't hold me to it, but Janet Napolitano didn't do anything about it. Neither did any of the other Obama officials that may not have been part of the decision, but they certainly didn't speak up about it. And it was all for this concocted lie. It was all for a concocted lie. And for those people to come now and allege that there was collusion with the Russians in order to sway an election or something, I think it's the height of arrogance or something. Now, I've said along the way that it's not incorrect to ask for an investigation into Russian interference in the election, but to use that to political ends and to come up with literally nothing, and in many cases to just expose the dishonesty of the federal government itself, That, in my opinion, has revealed that our political system, our law enforcement system, is completely broken. But this Project Cassandra stuff with Hezbollah is just another angle in it. It's like we're in a fun house. You move along these mirrors, and each mirror shows a different angle of why the American justice system is fucked up. Each different mirror, you see one that's too fat, one that's too skinny. In the case of the Russian investigation, the investigation is too fat. It's too over aggressive. In the case of this Hezbollah affair, the Project Cassandra, it's been dramatically starved and skinnied up. So when you see these people coming around and they're saying, well, how can you impugn the motive of Bob Mueller and James Comey, who are upstanding people? I believe Mueller was in Vietnam and Comey was a judge, and I don't remember what others. Let me see here. James Comey, did he serve in the military at all? I know they always say that he's a fucking Boy Scout and like a Catholic, like a devout Catholic or something, but he was a U.S. attorney under Bush. So this guy, he is a complete joke. When you want to say, oh, he was a registered Republican or whatever, it doesn't mean anything. If a registered Republican was the head of the FBI and he allowed this Project Cassandra to be tampered with and dismantled at the behest of the president, and he didn't think that was cause enough for him to at least resign or something, then fuck his party and fuck everything that's associated with it. I don't have any loyalty to the Republican Party, and neither should have he, and neither should anybody that if you're all about being affiliated with something that doesn't do anything useful, then you don't have any use yourself. That's what I think of James Comey. That's what I think of Bob Mueller. That's what I think of Barack Obama. President Trump, not perfect person, but he's all about doing what he wants to do, what he sees as right. It could be that he will be proven with the passage of time to have done a few mistakes. Hopefully nothing that will be a dramatic mass casualty event or something. But look, Pinochet says, I hate having to say that Pinochet says that, but I see what he means. He says, good grief, Saul Alinsky would be proud. Well, what Saul Alinsky did with all of this diversionary tactics and dirty tricks and whatever, this is exactly what was going on. This bullshit with getting peace with Iran. Iran is not a country that really seeks peace. It's a country that does want to expand its influence in the Middle East, to become a real global power, and eliminate Israel. But eliminating Israel is only the means to other ambitions. They want to become another world power, and they're doing very well at it. I guess toast to them. If you want to, people want to condemn Iran for all their hateful rhetoric. Yeah, good. Fine. You want to condemn a country, fine. But did Iran play the cards right? Absolutely. It's not Iran's fault that we've got to this point. We're going in circles here, so I'm sorry if I'm maybe repeating myself a few times, but what this Project Cassandra essentially reveals is that President Obama has his priority was to get that headline that he achieved a freezing of the nuclear program, that there would be peace between the USA and Iran. I think if he would have really had it his way, he would have completely reopened relations with Iran by the end of his presidency. Now, he didn't get to do that because I think he knew that it would jeopardize his standing in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party was trying to raise, funds from AIPAC and other, other idiots that consider themselves, oh, we need to play both sides. The Democrats are pro-Israel too. Fuck you. There is no such thing as playing both sides. And this idea that foreign aid is the answer, that you need more foreign aid, you need more military aid, and that's what's going to make your country more secure is ridiculous. It's stupid. And it shows a certain corruption on their end too. A lot of these lobbyists and there are Israeli officials that encourage it. No, we don't need to give foreign aid to anybody. I think it's very apropos that President Trump is considering cutting foreign aid. I wish that he would cut foreign aid to all countries. That includes Israel, that includes Egypt, that includes Saudi Arabia, that includes any other country in the world, and then we could just sell them the stuff that they want. And if they don't want it, they don't want it. And it would be much more simple that way. Instead, you fuel arms races. You fuel this never-ending cycle of just whatever. That's not what I believe in. That's not what I believe in. The way to end conflicts is not that way. You need to disengage the global powers, and then the countries that are involved on the ground, they can kind of settle it themselves, either at the negotiating table or on the battlefield. I mean, that's the way it is. This isn't a pacifist mindset. It's a non-interventionist mindset. Now, if the United States sees it fit to intervene on the side of one side or another, if they want to intervene in a conflict, that decision remains open. But that doesn't mean we have to shovel foreign aid to all these countries. Pinochet says, "I hope we cut off the Iranian and Soros misuses of U.S. aid." I think U.S. aid is a little different from what I'm talking about, but yeah, I think U.S. aid is kind of it is being misused in a lot of other places, especially in more third world countries like in Africa and Asia. So let's cut through some of these other topics that I was going to cover. You have the Mueller investigation. You have President Obama's ethics czar, Norm Eisen. He comes out, he says, the 4 threats to Robert Mueller. I guess, he didn't want to do like the 12 days of Christmas, but he did, the 4 threats to Robert Mueller. This was on December 21st. And it says, at least for the moment, it seems that Robert Mueller, the special counsel, may keep his job. President Trump declared this week that he does not currently intend to fire him, a concession perhaps to the overwhelming public opinion opposition to such a move. But that doesn't mean Mr. Mueller's investigation is free from peril. The inquiry remains in great danger, facing 4 looming threats from Mr. Trump and his allies. Curbing Mr. Mueller, almost as bad as firing him, Mr. Mueller could install someone at the Department of Justice to oversee Mr. Mueller's investigation, a minder who could control and cut Mr. Mueller's budget, eliminate some of his team, or curtail the scope of his investigation. Mr. Mueller seems safe as long as his current supervisor, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, is in place. Mr. Rosenstein just vouched for the special counsel before Congress. But the president has reportedly grumbled about Mr. Rosenstein and could replace him with a crony who would be more willing to interfere. The president might also try to force out Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who recused himself over a conflict of interest, and replace him with an anti-Mueller hand who presumably would not have such an obvious conflict. Excuse me, I have like a stuffy nose today. Mr. Trump would be within his powers to make such a move, but the public can push back by calling for Congress to pass pending legislation to protect Mr. Mueller's job. Congress should maintain its recent practice of taking short pro forma adjournments rather than taking a full recess, because the latter would allow the president to fire Justice Department personnel and replace them with recess appointments. Then there would be issuing pardons. The president may also try to pardon away the special counsel's investigation. Mr. Trump could grant pardons to individuals who have already pleaded guilty, such as Michael Flynn, his former national security advisor, who pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI this month. Or Mr. Trump might do so prospectively to those who may be targets, such as his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, or his son, Donald Trump Jr. Mr. Trump might even issue one to himself. He reportedly asked about it, whether individually or as part of a blanket pardon for all those involved in the Russia investigation. Here, too, voices must be raised now and loudly, with Senator Mark Warner's strong comments this week in defense of Mr. Mueller as an outstanding first step. Congress has a particularly important role to play, making clear that such pardons would be a red line that would lead to abuse of power hearings in the House Judiciary Committee and possible impeachment. That outrage is not just a matter of legal or moral sentiment. Mr. Trump would be running serious legal risks with this course of action. Pardons made to family members with corrupt intent might, like the president's firing of James Comey, the former FBI director, constitute obstruction of justice, opening him to additional federal investigation. Self-pardon is contrary to the principles of the rule of law that are amended in blah, blah, blah. So he's saying he can't pardon himself. And then it says, smearing Mr. Mueller. The most certain and perhaps most insidious assault will be more of what we have already seen. A campaign to smear Mr. Mueller and his staff by pushing meritless attacks. This effort began with bogus conflict and allegations based on the fact that Mr. Mueller and Mr. Comey were acquainted and on the private political contributions of Mr. Mueller's team members, all complete baloney under applicable precedent. A more recent move has been to try to tarnish Mr. Mueller's team because one of his FBI agents sent politically charged texts about candidates of both parties, even though the special counsel removed the agent immediately after learning about the messages. That was followed by the canard that Mr. Mueller had unlawfully obtained Trump transition team emails, even though there is no legal basis for an expectation of privacy on email accounts provided by the government. The good news is that these smears are not working so far. Mr. Trump's efforts may even have been counterproductive, apparently spurring Republicans and conservatives to speak up in defense of Mr. Mueller. And then firing Mr. Mueller. Mr. Trump is nothing if not mercurial. He might change his mind any day, especially if Mr. Mueller indicts someone close to the president, which seems inevitable. It is the only explanation for why he cut such a favorable deal with Mr. Flynn. Fortunately, it's not easy for Mr. Trump to fire Mr. Mueller, but I hate how the New York Times makes you say Mr. for everybody. But all those who helped push the president into his recent concession must maintain and intensify the pressure, especially with the holidays arriving and Congress leaving town. The drumbeat of distortions and okay, so then he gets on his high horse and whatever. Democracy demands defense with analysis, opinion, and the readiness for public protest. One of the co-authors, Mr. Eisen, has been involved in organizing these efforts. Peaceful force is something that Mr. Trump has made clear he understands. We must continue to deploy it, lest the president achieve by debasement what our collective efforts have thus far prevented him from doing, directly stopping Robert Mueller's investigation. So what you just heard is a bunch of horseshit of the highest order. These are people that they're just grasping at straws. First of all, Robert Mueller is probably not going to be. He's probably not going to be fired because there's nothing that that the Mueller investigation has produced that's really been of any use to the Democrats. In fact, on the contrary, it's just been eyesore after eyesore. Let me see. Oh, okay. So he is a member of the shadow cabinet. Okay. The shadow cabinet is this group of Obama and Clinton era Democratic cabinet and other officials that they say, oh, we're the ones who are going to criticize the Trump administration and whatever, and we're going to provide the moral, the moral answer to it or whatever. And so they actually do tease a different story that I'm about to go into, the Andrew McCabe story. And you have other people in this shadow cabinet belly aching over the corporate tax rate going down, and this picture of of Trump Tower complaining about all the gold in it. These are just like whining babies at this point. I don't know why they didn't feature his bullshit. But in any case, yeah. So what these people are trying to say is, yeah, it's fine that Jeff Sessions had to recuse himself because of a conflict of interest because he happened to have campaigned for Donald Trump, but they don't see a problem with Bob Mueller having been, a personal friend of James Comey. They were very close. It's not like they were acquainted. They were very close. And in fact, Comey revealed that the motivation for him leaking a memo last spring, or it's still technically this spring, to the press was in order to trigger an investigation, and he specifically thought that Bob Mueller would be the perfect person to run it. And as we all know, Mueller has lied under oath, or sorry, Comey has lied under oath several times. He's lied under oath about, well, let's look. Comey lies under oath. Here, this is from November 7th. Let me mute this. Comey lied under oath on multiple occasions, clearly violated FBI policy. He says there is evidence to support a conclusion that, now this is from November 7th. It says there is evidence to support a conclusion that Secretary Clinton and others used the email server in a manner that was grossly negligent with respect to the handling of classified information. Comey wrote in an early draft of this statement. The language was later changed, replacing the wording grossly negligent to extremely careless. Federal law states that gross negligence in the handling the nation's intelligence can be punished criminally with prison time or fines. Jim Comey lied to Congress on multiple occasions under oath. He has misrepresented the facts of this case on so many different occasions, and we've also seen what he's done, which is a breach of the FBI policy. He has taken information that he has obtained while the FBI director and publicly and privately leaked it to his former professor to make sure it made it into the mainstream media, which is a clear violation of the FBI policies. The former FBI director was fired by Trump over his handling. So, look, the Comey memo was a damning incident, and it shows that he was willing to completely sell out his own department's policies in order to screw with Donald Trump because he didn't trust Donald Trump. Pinochet says, he says, I hope we cut off. No, I already said that. The Mueller investigation seems like the gift that keeps on giving, so I'm in favor of keeping it for now. Yeah, I agree totally. I think that it's so far been, just, like basically they've been throwing pick sixes like every play, which I'm about to go into further now. Now, there's this article from the week, too long, I can't include it. I'm just going to put it in here. And this guy describes basically how how easy it is to concoct one of these Russia conspiracies. So I'm going to put that in the chat. You guys can take a look at that if you want. But moving on from there, where did I have that one? I had an article from USA Today. So it says FBI Director Andrew McCabe to retire next year following Trump and GOP criticism. It says FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who has become a lightning rod for criticism of the Bureau from President Trump and other Republicans, is expected to leave the Bureau early next year after he is eligible for retirement, an official said Saturday. The official spoke to USA Today anonymously because the person is not authorized to discuss personnel matters. Now, you can take that either way. Either you can trust that, which is what you've been, what the the media has been telling you to do. Trust us. We have unverified sources. We have confidential sources within the administration. So you could choose to trust them, or you could do, maybe he's not going to resign. Maybe he's not going to retire. Now, President Trump tweeted earlier today, he was making fun of him. He was saying, oh, he's got the clock ticking until retirement, 90 days. Wonder what's going to happen with that. Technically, he could find a way to fire McCabe and have him denied his full retirement. Among the allegations that McCabe should have recused himself from the Clinton investigation because his wife, as a candidate for state senator in Virginia in 2005, received $675 grand from the Democratic Party and its allies. How can FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, the man in charge, along with Lincoln James Comey, oh, this is a Trump tweet, Lincoln James Comey of the phony Hillary Clinton investigation, including her 33,000 illegally deleted emails, be given $700,000 for wife's campaign by Clinton puppets during the investigation? So I think actually it happened more recently than that. So the tweets followed a Washington Post report early Saturday of McCabe's plans to retire in a few months when he becomes eligible for a full pension. McCabe joined the FBI in 1996, according to CNBC. Trump, who made McCabe acting director of the FBI for nearly 3 months this year, after he fired Comey, has been increasingly critical of McCabe in recent months. Trump also took notice of James Baker, the FBI's top lawyer, and in reports he was being reassigned as Director Christopher Wray begins to assemble his own team. And then it says the growing attacks on FBI officials led Comey on Friday to lament the partisan atmosphere surrounding the agency. Well, it's your fault, motherfucker. I'm sorry, but fuck the FBI at this point. They've really, and FBI, if you're listening, get your own shit in order. If you're so worried about assholes on the internet making fun of you, well, look at the morons that manage you. That's the hot clip from the day, guys. Sadly, we're now at a point in our political life when anyone can be attacked for partisan gain, Comey tweeted. James Baker, who is stepping down as FBI general counsel, served our country incredibly well for 25 years and deserves better. He is what we should all want our public servants to be. Well, he didn't exactly stop the Project Cassandra bullshit. So at this point, I'm trying to not get too cynical about it, but there's no way you can't. These agencies, they've betrayed the United States. They allowed this Obama charade with Iran to go on, and they were saying, it's fine. It's fine. This is country before party. Well, that's not what it means. Country before party means that you look out for the interests of the citizens, of the voting public, as opposed to a certain group that you belong to. What are these people doing? They're protecting the group that they belong to. Now, some of the group belong to the Democrats, and some of them belong to the Republicans. That's like some people, in gym class, they give you those stupid, those mesh jerseys that you put on for class, or you'll go shirts and skins, and then the next game, the people switch. Some people will put their shirts back on, some people will take their shirts off, and they become the skins. That's the way that this political football works, where they say, oh, he's a staunch Democrat, oh, he's a staunch Republican. These people don't have any beliefs. They're fucking gargoyles. What is James Comey as FBI director? What has he advanced in the way of reducing the federal government's intrusiveness into the lives of the citizens? He didn't do anything to help mitigate this IRS tax scandal where they were auditing Tea Party groups. He didn't do anything to prevent Obama from investigating a few reporters like James Rosen. This was a guy who was basically an Obama pawn. And for anybody to think that you can tell me that because somebody is a registered Republican or registered Democrat, that they have any beliefs that will prevent them from acting like some sort of corrupt whore of a deep state or establishment agenda, whatever you want to call it. Some people will say Illuminati. Some people will say the Masons. Some people will say anything. But there's a group at the top that they have influence and they can get people to do what they want. And party affiliation is bullshit. It's all fucking nonsense. James Comey was a tool of the Obama administration. He was doing it in order to, it was for his own ego. He was trying to say, I managed the FBI. We didn't have any huge fuck ups while I was FBI director. I kept the country safe and whatever. And he didn't want to have to deal with the Clinton investigation. In fact, I believe he never wanted to investigate it to begin with. He would have been fine with dropping the investigation and not having it investigated at all. What happened? Congress forced him to investigate it. He knew about this shit, the Uranium One garbage. They knew about this shit. All that stuff with Fast and the Furious with Eric Holder. He knew about it. This Project Cassandra nonsense. DACA. When you have all these cases where the Obama administration says, hold up now, in order to bring about a real reconciliation of this country, I believe that we have to let a lot of fucking illegal immigrants and their children cross the border. We're just going to have to deal with them here. And, that's the humanitarian thing to do. And fuck the law. The law doesn't fucking matter. Well, now that you're not president anymore, the law does seem to matter, because now people can pass a law, and the new president, whoever he is, and in this case it's Donald Trump, he can choose to enforce it differently. And now nobody has to give a fuck what you said when you were president for 8 years and you basically didn't do shit to help anybody. You fucked over your own city, Chicago, which is a bleeding mess now. The city of Baltimore is just in complete disrepair. I think, what was the statistic today? I think they said, yeah, here we go. There's some more Venezuela shit I want to say, but Baltimore murder rate surges again in 2017, now tied with Venezuela. Here's how your city fared. So I'm going to see if my city's even on it. No, I don't think we're on it. So, I think we're doing pretty good. Seattle is pretty low. So Baltimore has 57.2 murders per 100,000 people. So look, there's definitely, now, does the Trump administration share in this blame? I want to figure out how, because Baltimore is a sanctuary city. They don't want to cooperate with the federal government. I think they've been fighting the Justice Department for a while. And, this is the world that Obama allowed to happen. Chicago, almost 25 murders per 100,000 residents. Memphis, I think, is 26. These are all urban areas. They were run by Democratic, in some cases, black mayors who, they don't really look after the interests of their own residents. They look after the interests of their party. So under James Comey, the FBI has been just a complete joke. It's just been a complete joke. And if that means that a registered Republican bears responsibility for that, then so be it. Who gives a fuck if it's a Republican or a Democrat that receives the blame? I'm willing to apportion the blame to either one. And this Robert Mueller to come around and say, oh, I'm going to get to the bottom of this Russia shit. You haven't discovered anything. If anything, your investigation has triggered the need for an investigation of the entire Justice Department. So, I think we've gone long enough today. I want to thank you guys for sticking around. Please comment below after the video ends. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Like the video. Share the video. And let me know what you think, because this Project Cassandra, we could be hearing more about it. Not if the mainstream media has anything to do with it, but I think it's a huge deal. I think I mean, I'm definitely going to be investigating the Venezuela angle of it. So that's about it. Have a great night. For those of you that celebrate Christmas, I guess Merry Christmas to you. For those of you that don't, I guess you could buy some of that Hezbollah cocaine and have your own white Christmas. And everybody have a good night. God bless you all.